It's coming to you from the Marshall Space Flight Center's Saturn V S1C test stand on 9 May 22. Time on deck is 17:50 hours Central Daylight Time. My friends, I'm going to talk to you about why Dmitry Rogozin, the head of the Russian space program, Roscosmos, really probably wants Musk terminated. Why? What could that possibly be? Well, it may not be for the reason stated. It's possible it is, but I'm going to tell you why I think otherwise. For example, what Rogozin come out and say, and it's related to what's behind me, by the way. What I'm going to say ties into this, so just hang on to your britches. I'm going to paint a picture here that you haven't heard probably. Rogozin came out and talked about how Elon Musk, the first multinational CEO of a great multinational corporation to endorse Ukraine, he talked about how he provided the Starlink terminals that enable the Ukrainians to have internet service, and how that served the Ukrainians. He talked about how, in fact, they were helicopter dropped into Mariupol, and how that supposedly served the Azov Nazi battalion, as he calls it. And for that reason, he said that he made a veiled threat that said Elon would have to answer in a adult sort of way, and that's taken to be a death threat. For what it is or isn't worth, Elon, of course, says, hey, if something happens to me, this is probably it. He seemed to be concerned about it. Now, I'm going to tell you that is probably not why it happened. Why do I say that? I say that for the following reason. Because even the Russians didn't have their own communications in Ukraine. Believe it or not, they went in using Ukrainian cell phone service. You got to be kidding me, right? And that is probably, see, I was really flabbergasted that thinking the first thing that Russia would do is take down the communications and the power grid in Ukraine. But they didn't do that. Why? Why didn't they just take air superiority? Well, now we know the answers to some of this stuff. The Russians didn't have adequate communications. Apparently, their communications battalions, like we have in the United States, signal groups, weren't up to snuff. Why? Lack of maintenance, corruption in their systems. They weren't able to communicate. Their generals were using Ukrainian cell phones. That's how they got tracked and terminated, was they were using Ukrainian communications assets, and that got hacked and gave away those people and their positions, and many of them got terminated. A lot of fire was put on Russian positions because they were using Ukrainian communication systems. Duh. Well, that's not too smart at all, but that just shows the pathetic nature of the invasion they staged, thinking that they would take it all real fast and they'd bring all their stuff, and probably their stuff didn't work in the first place because of lack of maintenance and such and so forth. We had a similar problem with that. We've had a failed rescue mission for the Iranian hostage crisis under Jimmy Carter, where helicopters and stuff was breaking down in the desert for lack of spare parts, which I understand perfectly well and can tell you about and have mentioned on my Green Rigs channel. So, yeah, like I was in charge of arms room, and I had 40 working M16s because we didn't have little bitty, itsy bitsy little springs to run the ejector pins or extractor and the ejector pins for the rounds out of the chamber. Wow. So that's the kind of situation Russia was probably facing. So they used Ukrainian communications. So since Russians were using Ukrainian communications, why are they harping on Elon Musk for providing them extra internet service? That sounds a bit hollow. Maybe there's a real reason. Maybe it's a bigger reason. How has Elon Musk most hurt Russia? Probably not through that. I think Elon Musk has most hurt Russia, especially Roscosmos, by essentially out-competing them, by practically putting them out of business. Because Roscosmos used to have the cheapest satellite launches. They used, because in Russia, the Russian people, when I was in Moscow visiting Roscosmos in March of 2010, they told me directly, the engineers there, that managers at Roscosmos made about $14,000 US a year annual salary. They said they could make more money running a hot dog stand. I believe they're right. I actually admired those guys there. They were good people that I met, but they were in a tight strait, a tight place. Their whole space program was essentially saved by the United States contracting them to build modules for the International Space Station, which Dmitry Rogozin has threatened to pull out of late. And not to mention, he's also threatened, he's been a lot of threats. He's threatened, how that Russia could wipe out NATO in 30 minutes. So why has he got such a burr up his rear end? Well, mainly because he was the deputy prime minister in Russia, and he got demoted to being the head of their space agency. To him, that's a demotion. Some people would consider that a promotion, like Senator Bill Nelson went to head of NASA. But in any event, Roscosmos is starving. And now they can't compete with Elon Musk at all for launch services, because Elon Musk, being an American company with American wages, because of his approach of things, can launch far cheaper and apparently far more reliable than Russia. Russia's Soyuz rocket used to be the most reliable rocket in the world. But as they lost their labor pool, their experienced staff, they started having reliability problems early on after the Soviet Union collapsed. So the point of how this connects, we also bought a lot of other services from Russia. For example, we were buying RD-180 engines. Our very own Atlas V rocket was powered by Russian engines. And they were tested and validated for use on the Atlas V right here at this very test stand. This test stand is where we test fired the RD-180 rocket motor, Russian rocket motor. I saw it myself when it was fired right here in this historic Saturn V S1C test stand. This is where the first stage of the Saturn V rocket was tested. When I was a kid, I grew up 70 miles from here, and I could hear this rocket stage being tested. And somebody can correct me if Elon Musk has done a full-up super booster test, but this was the most powerful rocket ever tested until Spaceship Super Booster come along. And I still think probably the most powerful test ever performed. 7.5 million pounds of thrust fired right here several times when I was a kid growing up, and I could hear it, a low rumble where I grew up. Well, this is where we tested the RD-180 that flew on our Atlas V rockets for quite a while, but now we're trying to move that over to a Blue Origin motor, which is a different system than Elon Musk has. Of course, it's Bezos's company, Blue Origin, but it's the American systems that are competing with and running Russians out of business. But the biggest competition to Roscosmos in general for satellite launches has been Elon Musk. It has been SpaceX. They're putting Roscosmos out of business practically. When I was at Roscosmos, I was visiting them on a Lunar Google X Prize competition, and it was for the we were looking at buying their lunar globe system, but they told us that they had a deal with India, and they had to let India have first dibs at launch. And India, the rules of the X Prize, Google X Prize, were that it couldn't be used by government first. If it was, we couldn't use it. See, Roscosmos arguably was something of a corporation, so we could hire them to do something like build us a launcher, a lander. But they couldn't change their agreement with India. Strangely enough, over time, India actually decided to develop their own systems and didn't use the lunar globe. So technically, it might have worked for us to have used that, but it didn't happen. But yeah, that's what took me to visit Roscosmos and Enki, the corporation that actually landed on Venus. The only entity that ever landed on Venus is now the Russian company Enki. And those engineers really impressed the heck out of me. But they just can't compete with Elon Musk. So I would say that the competition that's putting Roscosmos and Russian companies out of business is hurting them more than some internet service that was provided by Starlink. So I would suspect, I can't say for sure, Dmitry Rogozin has a burr in his rear end apparently, but for several reasons. He's been making a lot of pointed pronouncements. Maybe his biggest disappointment is he's not Prime Minister of Russia. But anyway, let's turn this around. I'll have y'all a quick look here what we got here. That's building 4666. Sounds like for the devil, right? But maybe it's because it's next to the big fire and smoke here, this test stand. And over here's the test stand where they did the rupture test on the first stage, the core stage of the Space Launch System, Artemis rocket system. And over here is where the Redstone rockets were initially tested, the very rockets that were developed for the Army right here, when this was, at that time, an Army base, the Army Ballistic Missile Center, before NASA took it over. Von Braun actually was in these bunkers when they were testing this rocket here. And I assume he was not that far away when they were testing the Saturn S1C right over here. I don't know if he would have been in this building. That was pretty dangerously close. Certainly is a little bit close for quantity distance for testing a 7.5 million pound thrust system. But and I can imagine the rupture test on the core stage there was a pretty loud boom too. But guys, a lot of history's taking place here. That over there is the building where they developed, actually did the modal test and the shaking for the Saturn V total stack and also the space shuttle system. At one time, they talked about doing that test for the well, actually what was going to be the Artemis, not Artemis, the, what do we call it before, Ares booster. We were going to do that there at one time, but they changed all that and didn't follow through with that with the newer program for Artemis, which we call SLS. So there's a lot of history right here. A lot of history all around me here for the Marshall Space Flight Center and the American Space Program and the Army program. You know, Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom first flew to space on in a suborbital flight, kind of like the New Shepard. That's why it's named after, you know, Alan Shepard, on a Redstone rocket developed right here. And the Redstone rockets also was dubbed a Jupiter C, but it's still a Redstone rocket. It actually launched our first satellite, the Explorer 1, into orbit. So a lot of history right here, my friends. A lot of history. So I'm going to read what you guys had to say real fast, and we're going to end the video here. And for that purpose, I will turn this back around, take off my sunglasses, face away from the sun for you guys, and try to read this stuff. So, well, I can't even read. I can get in the shade. Let me get my vehicle over behind it or something so I can try to see the text on here. I might have to go to that shade tree. All right, here we go. Yo, what's up? Says Renee Cruz. How you doing? Finest Planet. How are you doing? Ryan Van Set. Hello, buddy. Hey, I'm doing good. Tracy. How are you doing? Demir. Daniel Twit. All right, I'll have to go back and change the spelling. That's right. Dmitry Rogkazin. Got it. Yeah, well, I'm not using notes right now. I'm just going off the cuff, and I'm an engineer. We can't spell. Got it. Going to push my SD Solar launch. There you go. Sounds like a plan there, Richard. Elton, good to see you. Hey, we got New Days Always in here. Where's she at? I missed that. All right. So, oh, there we go. Yeah, hit the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Good day, Greg. All right, good to see y'all. Is LOX methane better than LOX RP1? Well, you know, Elon chose it because he could make methane on Mars. Is it better? Well, you know, in terms of density, the RP1's pretty darn good. You know, in first stage, density is a really important thing. Density impulse over specific impulse, maybe. That's something the old guys used to talk about. Some people thought that the hydrogen rockets, the specific impulse required so much volume and tankage that it didn't buy you enough to make up for it. Some people thought density impulse should have been a way to go all the way up. I know new serious rocket engineers that really felt that way. Alrighty, guys, we're gonna call it a day here. I'll have to go in and correct this. I'll probably have to log into my computer to do it. So yeah, I thought I was misspelling it, but I was just doing it standing there by the test stand. I was typing it in. Alright, guys. Well, that I'm going to say thank y'all for watching. Have an awesome day. And I will have a video from Green Greg Zone here about the 9 May parade and Putin's puttering. Basically, I think the Emperor discovered he's naked. So everybody take care. Have a great day. And check out my Green Greg's video soon. I don't know if I go live with it or just post it later tonight. Y'all take care. And with that, I'm going to say Greg out.